Okay, after spending more hours than I'd like to admit on the video editing, I've decided, fuck it. I'm done with video editing. I'm done spending so much time on the part of the process I hate the most. From now on, I'm making these podcasts and there will be one still image. My suggestion is just to listen. Oh, also, yeah, I know. I'm talking about Sunset a lot. After this bit, I'll move on to other topics, I promise. So I'm kind of cheating with this video. I already covered this subject on both the Sunset Shimmer Reddit and DeviantArt all the way back in 2014, Feb 1st to be precise. And hey, 3 things. 1, there are some things that I've clarified and added to my theory over the years that make it more credible and, in my opinion, interesting. 2, I'll mention a drawback to this theory of mine. And 3, after I'm done explaining it, I'm going to compare it to some other takes on Sunset Shimmer's cutie mark to show what I like more about my own theory. And now let's get into it. I think Sunset's special talent, i.e. what makes her special, has to do with accomplishing and exceeding her goals. In other words, her purpose in life is to accomplish, if not exceed, these goals. Goals are signified by the sun, and whenever she meets a goal, that goal has passed. In essence, it falls like the setting of the sun. While her cutie mark isn't a sunset per se, it is a sun, and so in the metaphor, this sun mark represents Sunset Shimmer's goals. This metaphor also accomplishes the rare task of relating her cutie mark back to her name. In doing so, it feels like this theory of mine has another layer of credibility. There's more though. Half of the cutie mark is gold to represent accomplishing the task. Why? Because the color gold relates to the precious metal that's often linked to success or wealth. For the majority of history, gold has been associated with that first place trophy, with success. Therefore, it makes sense that a young Sunset Shimmer would link the color gold to accomplishment. The other half is red to represent exceeding the goal. The color red is often associated with ambition, power, and passion. People who have a lot of ambition typically don't just aim for the top. They aim to outdo the top and perhaps hit an entirely new level. For this reason, a young Sunset would probably perceive her ambition and desire to exceed goals with the color red. Given what I've seen of Sunset, this seems to be the big thing about her. She frequently aims to accomplish her goals in a way where either A, she gets exactly what she aims for, or B, striving to blow those goals out of the water. In the first movie, Sunset Shimmer's goal was winning the fall formal, and she confidently kept her eye on that prize. Even after she essentially lost, with Twilight not only winning, but refusing to give in to her demands, Sunset Shimmer wasn't having it. She'd rather rip the thing away than admit defeat. We can also see this aspect of Sunset in Human Fluttershy's statement, whenever Sunset Shimmer wants something, she gets it. Then in the annual comic, this theory of Sunset was further supported with the opening exam. In front of the same ponies that administered Twilight's entrance exam, Sunset blows them away with an impressive burst of magic. That was an exam, and not only did she ace it, she annihilated it. Later on in the comic, near its end, we also get this rich line. I deserve to stand beside you and be your equal, if not your better. At that point, she had seen the alicorn reflection, and that then became her goal, which she wanted to hit, if not exceed. Everyone, of course, has goals which they want to accomplish or exceed, but what makes Sunset Shimmer special is that she makes a point in it. This is the big thing she likes to do. Her special talent is showing the world how obviously great she is. Hint, hint, it plays into her ego. Now, as much as I love this theory, I'd be remiss not to mention its one flaw. In later content from the second movie onward, this theory arguably isn't supported, but at the same time, it's not refuted. We haven't really seen Sunset Shimmer individually take on any big goals after EQG1. You could argue that she took on the goal of freeing the students in Rainbow Rocks or winning the friendship games, but so did the rest of the Humane Five, so it's kind of a moot point. In Legends of Everfree, there's no clear instance of her taking on a goal. From the virtual series, you could say that she took on the goal of winning the dance competition, getting her driver's license, or making a successful play, but she doesn't really do anything that's particularly striking. The only piece of content that I could really argue supports this theory is that bit at the carnival stand in Roller Coaster of Friendship, where we see her get very aggravated at her trying to win that game. She seemed to get far more flustered than Sai Twy. Then again, I could easily see someone play devil's advocate and say it's too minor of an instance to be related to something as grand as a cutie mark. All that said, the flaw of it not being really supported or refuted isn't that big of a flaw to me. I almost wonder if it's too small to be considered a flaw. It's that minor. Then look at all the things going for it, both its connection to the symbols and the evidence that supports it. I certainly see it better than any of the alternatives out there. No offense to the people who like those theories. I just find them kinda lame. Out of all the opposing viewpoints, the one I find perhaps the most disappointing is the idea that her cutie mark represents fire magic. My beef with this interpretation is twofold. First off, it's not in any way metaphorical. Unlike my theory, it doesn't represent some larger idea or allude to what Sunset's purpose may be. It's perhaps the most literal interpretation you could get from this image. And well, this form of literalism isn't really followed in the show. Even cutie marks like Applejacks have more meaning to them than this. From Cutie Mark Chronicles, we can glean that her cutie mark means that she belongs at Sweet Apple Acres. It isn't just, she's an apple farmer. Then take the CMC's cutie marks. Some random passerby probably wouldn't have the faintest clue what the shield is supposed to represent. We know because we've been following the CMC's journey since Season 1. My next problem with Sunset's mark representing fire magic is that it has no application in the human world. There's no corollary. If I was to follow this interpretation, then I'd have no choice but to think Sunset wasn't living up to her special purpose. In my opinion, cutie marks are supposed to represent some pony's purpose, and to thereby be relevant all the way into old age. Yes, even if they're in an alternate world. That could be said for Twilight, whose special purpose has to do with magic, friendship magic and otherwise. If she can find a corollary here, then yeah, I expect the same for Sunset. If cutie marks are only relevant when the pony was young, then why does it all matter? Why should they or any other person give a damn? It's a relic of the past with no application to the present or future. Yes, I love the past, even the most obscure details, but that's because I see these details having some application to the present and beyond. One of the most important questions in history, in my opinion, is why does it matter? Going off of other people's experiences, this is a common complaint about history classes. People need that connection to the present and future for them to care. For every character we have ever met, there is never a point where their cutie mark isn't still relevant to them. So that's one Sunset cutie mark interpretation I dislike. Here's another. Controlling the sun. Okay, I'll admit I like this theory more than the previous one, but not by much. It's arguably ever so slightly less literal. It's a sun, same as Celestia's, and Celestia moves the sun. So maybe Sunset's purpose is moving the sun. I've already gone on a huge spiel about literalism, so I won't do that again. It also doesn't have a corollary to the present. I won't complain about that again. But there's one more reason I dislike this theory. I feel this interpretation makes Celestia too relevant to Sunset's purpose. Yes, I'm on board with the common conception that Celestia bears some responsibility for Sunset's path. There's the key word, some responsibility. I have no problem buying that Sunset got her cutie mark right around the time she was made Celestia's student. In fact, I love that interpretation. It works perfectly with my own theory for Sunset's mark. But this interpretation that Sunset's cutie mark is controlling the sun, well, it means that we can't even talk about Sunset's purpose without bringing up Celestia. Sunset would be Celestia Light, a Celestia-like figure that simply went down the wrong path. This would go against the original thing we heard from Cheerilee, that cutie marks are supposed to be what makes a pony different and unique. And for what? For Sunset having an ability we've never seen her perform? Nah, that ain't right. In my view, Sunset is more than just Celestia's failed student. She's her own person. Yes, while talking about her past, one must bring up Celestia. After all, they had a student-to-teacher connection and that heavily affected Sunset's course. But for Sunset's purpose, I want to be able to just mention her purpose without locking her down to the mistakes she made with Celestia. It's the same with every character in the show. With AJ, all I have to say mentioning her purpose is that she belongs on Sweet Apple Acres. I don't have to mention Granny Smith or Big Mac. With Twilight, all I have to say is that studying magic and having an interest in all kinds of magic is her purpose. I don't have to mention Celestia. But if Sunset's cutie mark meant controlling the sun, I'd feel I was doing a disservice not to mention Celestia. And with that, there is one more interpretation of Sunset Shimmer I want to bring up. That being, it represents her desire to overthrow Celestia and shows her path from dark to light as well as her capacity to go in either direction. This theory is actually a pretty good one in my opinion. It's not nearly as literal as the others, and I respect it for that reason alone. But the first part of it, the overthrowing Celestia part, earns my ire, because it means there's no corollary to the human world, no application to the present, as that's no longer relevant, and one must mention Celestia if we are to talk about Sunset's purpose. I also don't like the first part of this theory, as it changes the chronology of Sunset's fall. I think this take means that when young Sunset got her mark, the notion of overthrowing Celestia was in her head. And well, I'm much more of a fan of the idea that this notion came into her head later on as a result of the mentorship. This interpretation could also mean that Sunset didn't get her cutie mark until later on, right near the point where her and Celestia split, but that would mean that Sunset spent the better part of her time with Celestia as purposeless. Personally, I'd rather see her as ahead of the curve, such as a Rainbow Dash, as opposed to behind it like an AJ. To me, it makes more sense that she'd have such an ego if she got it ahead of her peers. As for the later parts of this theory, her path from dark to light, or her capacity to go in either direction, well, it's a little bit too meta in my opinion. Whenever I'm thinking about how a character got their cutie mark, I insist that the revelation be something that the character themselves could come to. With either of these interpretations, I can't imagine a Sunset Shimmer earning her cutie mark thinking she'd go from a dark to light path, or even that she'd have the capacity to go down a dark path. One could argue that it's a destiny sort of thing, and thereby Sunset wouldn't have had to think of it, but I don't know. I'm not a fan of destiny. It feels like we're taking the power out of her hands, or hooves. One other point I'd like to mention is that I think everybody has the capacity to go in either direction, light or dark. For Sunset's cutie mark to also mean that, I think it's a bit of an unfair slight against her. Not many ponies have their cutie mark mean there's a potential for evil in them. If Sunset's cutie mark destiny meant that she had this capacity for evil, then I'd be calling her cutie mark destiny a total ass. I mean, yes, it's attached to her ass, but it doesn't have to be one. And there we have it. If you disagree with me, I'd love to hear what you think on the topic in the comments below. Thanks for watching and have a good day.